right, good to have you back on the show. Organized labor has broken down their demand for 30,000 naira minimum wage to amount to just 50 naira per meal.
And even at that, state governors say that that amount is only feasible if Nigeria's revenue sharing formula is changed so that the states get more money. They were speaking at a public hearing by the House of Representatives Ad Hoc Committee on the bill. Let's now bring in our National Assembly correspondent, Joke Adisa, to tell us more.
Hello, Joke Adisa.
A moment of decision for these lawmakers as key actors in the labor movement and the government hierarchy come face to face to defend their separate stance on the clamor for a new wage. And the government hierarchy come face to face to defend their separate stance on the clamor for a new wage. For 4 hours, facts and figures are laid down. In an emotional speech, Speaker Yakubu Dogara insists that the welfare of workers is central to taming corruption.
Corruption affects the poor most because they depend more on government for support. How then do we fight corruption from the roots rather than dealing with its symptoms, as is presently the case? The answer is for us to begin to pay workers living wage.
For the governors, only an immediate review of the revenue sharing formula can guarantee what the workers are asking for.
Since the assumption of democratic system, it has never been done, and which is very clear and categorical by the Constitution that should be made, reviewed each and every 5 years.
Labour and Productivity Minister, along with his finance counterpart, also had their turn at the podium.
It does not preclude anybody who has capacity to do better than even the federal government from doing so.
The president very much wants to pay a very good minimum wage. But even as we do this, we have to make sure that the federal government, the states, businesses, and both small and medium-sized businesses have the ability to pay.
Organized labor spoke through NLC President Ayuba Waba, who received standing ovations from the gathering. He picked holes in all arguments against 30,000 naira and was supported by employers' umbrella body.
30,000 translates to 1,000 naira per day. If you have a family of 6, husband and wife and 4 children, it translates to 50 naira per meal. This is where we is. So I want to plead with our governors.
As the voice of business in Nigeria and part of the tripartite committee on the national minimum wage, we are in concurrence and fully support the 30,000 naira recommendation.
Questions, observations, and suggestions came in from the lawmakers who promised to be just.
The hopes of labor to be proactive so that on their own to trigger the process of amending the National Minimum Wage Act once it is due for review.
Public hearing, like I said, is probably the most important in the process of lawmaking. You want to know the view of those the law are meant for. We have heard your views, and these views are going to be properly reflected in the legislation.
The committee is to lay its report for consideration and passage on Tuesday. Joke Adisa, TVC News, Abuja.
Okay, we have in the studio a fellow of the Chartered Institute of Personnel Management of Nigeria and MD CEO Interventions and Results Limited, Femi Mokikon, right here. Good morning. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning.
And of our correspondent as well, Joke Adisa, is standing there is in Abuja at the moment to talk to us more about the meeting that happened yesterday. Let's now begin with our correspondent, Joke Adisa. Well, Joke, what has been the reaction so far to the submissions of the leader of the House of, Lower House of Assembly, Dogara, when he said that 30,000 naira is not enough?
Yes, indeed. He actually drew ovations from very loud ovations of that from members of organized labor. And let me also say that labor duly mobilized its members to the National Assembly yesterday, and so they had today, as it were, immediately, his speech was filled with emotions. It was like, okay, if we say we are tackling corruption, workers who create this wealth must also be very well taken care of. And so they also gave him a standing ovation even after the speech, even intermittently as he read through, he was being applauded. So moving away from that, we also saw even at that conference, at that conference yesterday, at that meeting, NLC president was also able to put together his thoughts. And looking at it from what we saw yesterday, I think he was able to convince the lawmakers why they should go for 30,000 naira. And he was also quick to say that even the figure was a negotiated figure already, that what they put on the table initially was 6,500. And so when you break it down, the 30,000 naira down for a family of 6, which is recognized even in law, that you will see that for each of the 6 members of a family, of an average family, they take 50 naira per meal. And you and I know that no one can get a meal of 50 naira today. So even the governors, they actually agreed they will pay if they have the means, but that the means are not there. So they are asking that the revenue formula be, sharing formula be reviewed. That has even never been reviewed since this dispensation. And so they said they are also willing to pay, but they cannot pay. And let me also say that the finance minister also added that we should be cautious of how well we overbloat the current expenditure at the expense of other expenditures of government. When you have like 70% of a nation's budget going for recurrent expenditure, then there is need for worry.
All right, thank you very much, Joke Adisa there, who covered that public hearing of the House of Reps yesterday, where all parties involved did speak their mind. Well, back to our guest right here in the studio, Mr. Mokikon. Thank you so much for joining us. You heard, what the Speaker of the House of Reps said there, that welfare workers is central to taming corruption. And you now have governors who are insisting that they cannot just afford 30,000 naira minimum wage. That as a matter of fact, it is only Lagos State that can afford it.
You see, I think the issue of taming corruption should not even arise when we are discussing minimum wage.
Okay.
Because the target for fighting this corruption is not the lower level people. It's not the workers that are on minimum wage. Yes, you can have their own level of kind of corruption, but the people that are actually the real issue hindering us in moving forward as far as corruption is concerned, they are the senior people, the top ones, the ones who can use their pen to do whatever they need to do. Having said that, anything the speaker says or anybody who says anything that goes to support increase in minimum wage will naturally receive the kind of applause that we saw in the National Assembly. The workers said they are looking for 30,000. Don't forget that this 30,000 is just minimum. They're not talking of living wage. They're not talking of decent wage. If they are talking of living wage, decent wage, we can go with the argument of the president of NLC. 50 naira per meal. Where will you get 50 naira meal in Nigeria today? Which means, therefore, that even this 30,000 naira is nothing. But they have settled for 30,000 naira through that negotiation process. I think the next logical thing is to take it forward. Well, we've seen a situation where what we had when we had 5,000 naira minimum wage for state and 7,500 naira for federal government is what is about to play out now. Federal government said it's ready to pay the 30,000 naira. States are saying they don't have the means to pay. I think that is the area we need to question a little bit. They give you a certain amount to spend. You have 1,000 items to spend this amount on. So what do? You know that this amount is not even enough for the 1,000. So what do? You prioritize. Are the governors now saying that paying salary is not a priority as far as they are concerned?
Well, they have said that paying salary is not the only job, they are cut out to do.
It's not a question about the only job. Who does the job?
They have their other contending issues.
Every other job they need to do, who does it? Is it not the workers? It's the workers that do this. whether it is road, whether it is hospital, whether it is education, you need workers to do this. If the workers are not happy, if they don't feel they are getting their dues, what do? They frustrate all your efforts on the other side. Deliberate sabotage. So I think the governors need to sit down, apart from prioritizing all the leakages that exist in those places. Can't they look at those leakages? And why, for God's sake, must we always continue to depend on the federal government?
Yeah, because I was going to ask that the governors are talking about revenue sharing formula, that if they are to meet up, then the formula needs to be reviewed. But the question is, can't the governors be proactive and look for alternative means of increasing the IGR?
That's exactly the point I'm making. You see, the issue of revenue sharing formula is much bigger than just minimum wage. If we want to talk about revenue sharing formula, then we need to look at the whole macros holistically. To just zero in on minimum wage and say, look at, I don't think that will work. What I think they need to do is the point you just made now. This thing they call IGR. Can't they for once sit down and become a little bit more creative?
Yeah, but that's a question that we have. We can ask that question till we're blue in the face. But the whole system, does it allow a state governor, for example, to be as creative as he should be, in a way that it will reflect on the IGR, the healthcare delivery, infrastructure development, and all other basic things that that individuals in their domains would actually need?
There's no doubt that there are
Is it not the structure? Is it not the is it not that is constraining?
Okay. But within those constraints, you can still be creative.
A state like Lagos, for instance.
Lagos has no problem. Lagos is swimming in wealth.
No, despite the constraints.
They still come up with a creative means of. But of course, you know that the wage or what the income level in other states is not the same thing as we have in Lagos State. For the individuals, Lagos can wake up one morning and say, for even standing up today, you must pay. And people will be willing to pay. Why? Because they want to stay in Lagos. You go to some state, I don't want to name any state, you go to some state, instead of staying, people want to run away from such states. Why? Because there is nothing to hold them back. There is nothing to attract them. And it is this area that governors should become creative. What can we do in this state to attract people? I give you an example. Just take entertainment. Today in the whole world, entertainment is a fast-growing industry. It's spinning money like no man business. There's no sector of this, no section of Nigeria where you don't find some cultural, some artistic, some creative young boys and girls who they just sit down and they wake up, they put a few things together. Before you know it, it's a hit. Why can't some people focus on that?
And some
must
states
everything
have
be in Lagos?
Some natural
tourism,
resources,
for example.
some natural resources that they can
No, because they have Abuja to rely on. They don't look at those areas. Any little thing they run to Abuja.
So how do we get out of this vicious cycle of, we don't have enough money to pay salaries, we have to rely on the federal government, and federal government says, because I recall when the bailout happened, President Buhari actually, spoke to the governors that they should begin to think out of the box to discover ways of, raising, their IGR. How do we get out of this cycle?
No,
really, what is the way out?
We've been saying it all along, but nothing has happened. Nobody has, none of the governors, all we just keep hearing is complaints. Let one of them take the initiative and say, for once, even this money I'm getting from Abuja, I will pretend that it doesn't exist. Let me go back. And what do? You need creative people. Assemble the brains around. Whether in the private sector or the public sector, you have the brains. It is people that will come up with the ideas, that will give us the resources that we require. There are several countries in this world that they have next to nothing in terms of resources. The only thing they have is the human being, human capital.
And isn't that all you need?
That's all you need. If you treat them well, develop them, let them express themselves freely, you will see very creative ideas. Before you know, you'll be asking yourself, for God's sake, why didn't we think about this
all along?
2 years ago, 10 years ago, 5 years ago? But here we just, every moment, go to Abuja. I agree completely there are constitutional issues that limit the kind of things that one can do particularly in terms of natural resources. At the time we are hearing resource control. At the time we are hearing, okay, let's go back to what we were doing under when the Awolowos and the rest were around, where each region, each zone, each state will take care of resources. Our constitution today does not allow that. And unless that constitution is amended or restructured, whichever way, we will continue with this constraint. And so it's for us as individuals operating within this constraint to then figure out what we can do. And it is all about the people. And it is these same people that you don't want to pay.
And that, no doubt, is a recipe for corruption. If you don't take care of the people who work for you.
At that level, yes. In fact, the truth of it is, with the amount of money you are paying them, the guy gave a very good example. He said a man with a wife with 4 kids, and you pay him 30,000 naira. He has to pay for a rent. That's why I was making a distinction between living wage and this minimum wage. He has to pay for rent. Children have to go to school. Medical has to be there. And all other things. My friend, will 30,000 naira be okay?
In the meantime,
no.
So
what do they do?
The Minister for Labour and Employment, Chris Ngige, has actually said that anyone, he did say that at that public hearing yesterday, that anyone who has the capacity to do more than 30,000 naira should feel free to do so. Yeah. It's a natural thing. It happens. In the private sector, for instance, you agree, but you know that in that sector there are senior boys, there are junior boys. The senior ones will go ahead and pay as far as ability to pay.
All right. Mr. Femi Mokiko, fellow Chartered Institute of Personnel Management and MD CEO, Interventions and Results Limited. Just before we go, it's also instructive to note that South Africa here. Just before we go, it's also instructive to note that South Africa here increased their minimum wage. It's now 126,000 naira, and we are struggling to pay 30,000 naira.
I know you always had issues with that one.
When you give me that side, then you must give me the other side. What's the cost of living?
Thank you very much indeed for coming.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Right.
It's 17 days to the general election. There are concerns that more than 5.6 million registered voters may be disenfranchised as they are yet to obtain their permanent voters card, that's a PVC. To enable registered voters collect their PVCs, INEC staff have been distributing the cards at ward levels across the country.
Now, the distribution at ward level ended on January the 21st, while the exercise continues at the headquarters of each local government area until February the 8th. INEC says there may be voter apathy during the polls, as millions of PVCs are yet to be collected across the country. Our correspondent in Rivers State, Uche Ukuru, went to town to speak to Nigerians and then filed in the support.
The reality that the 2019 general elections is just a few days away explains the frustrations of these prospective voters. They've been waiting for hours at INEC's office in Port Harcourt City local government area to collect their PVCs. Some have had to wait like this for many days. They fear the worst, that the polls would come and go while the search and wait for their PVCs continues.
This PVC got damaged. It fell off my pocket and the car smashed on it since 2017. And this is 2019. I've been coming here. I've registered it for reprinting, which they promised that it will be out by November last year. This is now January 2019. And up to now, there's nothing to go about it. No way to go about it. Even me on my own, I'm tired. Because I'm coming here, I have things to do. I left what I'm doing to come to my collect, so I'm tired of it. I'm even thinking I will not come back again.
I've not been able to collect my PVC. I came last 2 weeks. After turning me from one side to another, I came last week. They said I should go and collect my printouts. I came back, yet they did not give me my PVC. Right now, I'm still here to collect my PVC, and since then, I've not taken it. So I don't know what the delay is for, because they told us that our vote is our right, and I'm here to collect my voter's card so that I can vote. But up to now, I've not been able to collect my voter's card, and I don't know why. I registered last year, towards November, December. That was when I registered. And they told us that by January to be out. And January now we are here. Nothing. So I don't know why. They said the delay is not from them. The delay is coming from Abuja. So we don't know why they are delaying our PVC.
At INEC's office in Obiakpo local government area, the situation is not any different.
I'm ready for mine, but I still want all of them to come out so that we can exercise our franchise. That's our right. So I want them to hasten whatever is delaying the PVC card.